any injury, have the Denver Broncos finally found a sustainable solution at inside linebacker? And should we expect a sophomore slump for Bo Nix in year 2 under Sean Payton? All things to come on today's rundown, and we will begin with the Denver Broncos, where off-season activities are back. The Broncos are back to work as OTAs kick off. Their first of 2 OTA sessions kicks off literally today. So we are inching closer to that late July window where training camp will officially begin, and it'll really start to feel like football season is truly upon us in 2025. So that has us thinking, what are some of the big headlines, storylines, questions, concerns maybe heading into this 2025 season, coming off the heels of one of the more exciting and surprising Broncos seasons since Super Bowl 50? And I think the number one question that's on everybody's mind probably centers around Bo Nix. The rookie quarterback was the 6th quarterback taken off the board in the draft. Sean Payton calling his shot, and in the early returns at least, seeming to succeed. Bo Nix was in genuine Rookie of the Year contention for most of that season, threw for 29 touchdowns, over just under 4,000 yards, and was really starting to make a splash, I think, unlike Broncos quarterbacks, rookie or veteran, had really since Peyton Manning walked out the door. But now the question is, was it a fluke or was it for real? I tend to lean on the side that it was for real and that Sean Payton is genuinely building something that is sustainable and genuine here in Denver to make the Broncos a contender again in the AFC West and eventually within the AFC and for a Super Bowl. So if you want to take a look at Bo Nix's 2024 stats from last season, as I mentioned, he finished just shy of 4,000 yards at 3,775. Was the second highest touchdown passer as a rookie in NFL history, behind Justin Herbert, who had 30. 12 interceptions to offset that, a handful of those coming in the first month of the season where he had a bit of a rough stretch, completing just over 66% of his passes, adding in about 400 rushing yards, 4 rushing touchdowns, and one very memorable Philly special touchdown reception to cap out his year. So that makes 34 total touchdowns on the year. Definitely a solid start for Bo Nix, hovering just outside the top 10, I believe, at 12th in terms of quarterback rankings production-wise for the 2024 season. Now, heading into 2025, there's a handful of factors at play that kind of tip the scales in both directions for Bo Nix, and we're going to see how close to level things remain. On the positive side, Bo Nix is not drinking through a fire hose, theoretically, anymore, like he was for the first month or so of his rookie season. He had one of the worst starts to a NFL career in recent and maybe even NFL history, but finished so strong on the back, half or 2/3 of the NFL season that it really shifted the narrative in his favor. So he's no longer drinking through a fire hose. He has another full offseason under Sean Payton with a year of chemistry with guys like Courtland Sutton, Marvin Mims, Devon Vele, Troy Franklin, and the like. Plus, you have new additions in significant contributor roles like R.J. Harvey, who's the presumptive, or we would think, presumptive leader in the running back room after the departure of Javonte Williams to the Dallas Cowboys. You have Pat Bryant in there, the 3rd-round receiver out of Illinois, who presents another big-body Courtland Sutton type archetype who can help work the middle of the field. Another projected leap for a guy like Marvin Mims, who's already finding all-pro level and Pro Bowl level success as a special teamer and return man, but saw some significant action in the receiving game as well. And then maybe this is a year where Troy Franklin, who had a lot of hype coming out of college as Bo Nix's former teammate, that there would just be some instant chemistry and connection there. Does he take the next step on what was kind of a wishy-washy up-and-down season for him? And Devon Vele, the late rounder, the 7th-round pick, who seemed to definitely outpace or outperform his draft status in terms of being a producer in the offense. Does Vele take another step? And then there's the Joker. You have Evan Ingram, who was on the offensive side of the ball, the crown jewel kind of piece in free agency. They signed him, the 30-year-old tight end, to a multi-year deal and expect him to be that missing piece, that Jimmy Graham, that Jeremy Shockey type player, maybe even shades of Michael Thomas in the sense of being able to work the middle of the field and stretch things a little bit further on the inside linebacker or front seven of a defense. And that's the things that are going on the positive side. I suppose if I was to stack some things on the negative side, it is that we still don't know, despite all the additions, whether or not Bo Nix's run game is going to be better. We don't know if, other than Cortland Sutton, there's a true alpha type personality that can help really maintain pressure on a secondary for Bo Nix. And NFL defenses and defensive coordinators, who frankly get paid a lot of money too, have a full year of tape on Bo Nix, and he's no longer catching anyone by surprise like you could argue that he was for good stretches of the season. We also are going to have to wait and see schedule-wise how things play out for the Broncos from a health perspective of the opponents and how things shake out, because the Broncos definitely caught some breaks playing an NFC South division that was pretty abysmal across the board from top to bottom. Going undefeated against that division. They caught Kansas City in week 17, resting all of their starters. You got a B squad win there that helped you ultimately secure a playoff spot that was in question up to that point. So there's still a lot of unknowns, I think, that contribute on the negative side of the scale if we're grading how likely it is to experience a sophomore slump from Bo Nix, like we've seen from plenty of prominent NFL quarterbacks in the past. But I will say this. I would argue that the positive side of things in terms of Bo Nix's sophomore season and the factors leading up to it, from some new hope in the backfield with R.J. Harvey, another weapon like Pat Bryant, continued development from a guy like Marvin Mims, Cortland Sutton remaining steady is all he would have to do, in my opinion, in the production that he has been able to produce, along with another offseason where they can take Bo Nix, no longer drinking through a fire hose, and add new wrinkles and new adaptations to their base offense. And you know Sean Payton loves his wrinkles. I would argue that all of those and the maturation that Bo Nix was able to experience by being thrown in the fire so early like he was is going to outweigh the potential negative of NFL defenses having another a year of tape on him and maybe some of the unknowns. Because let's be honest, we don't know if R.J. Harvey is going to be like a true, like a bell cow 3-down type back, or a dual threat back like Alvin Kamara and Reggie Bush and Chris Ivory and other runners that Sean Payton experienced, and Darren Sproles-like types who could contribute it in a multifaceted type of way that Sean Payton was so used to working with in his offense. We don't know if R.J. Harvey is going to be that, but the bar's pretty damn low to be better than what it was last year with Javonte and Jaleel and Audric Estime. And Audric Estime maybe takes another step forward, a guy that Sean Payton clearly believes in and wants to see more from. So in my opinion, I am not expecting a sophomore slump in the traditional sense from Bo Nix. I don't think it's out of the question at all for Bo Nix to once again flirt with, if not exceed, around that 4,000-yard passing mark and get up into that 26 to 30 touchdowns and maybe even less interceptions, increasing that ratio closer to that, 3 or 3.2 to 1 kind of range. I do think that he may not have to be relied on as much on his legs. So if there's a rushing dip compared to what we saw in his rookie season, I think that's reasonable. But I think all of those initial factors are carry more weight going into this 2025 season on the positive end that will offset some of the unknowns and potential familiarity that NFL defenses will have with Bo going into year two. And if it doesn't translate from a record perspective, I think there will be more logical things we can point to. If the Broncos finish 9-8 instead of 10-7, then Bo Nix just wasn't as good in year two as he was in year one. That's my initial gut feeling on it, and we'll have to see how it shakes out. Another big question when it comes to the 2025 iteration of the Denver Broncos is, what is it going to look like at inside linebacker? The first two big splash signings of free agency for the Broncos were both on the defensive side of the ball, in safety Talanoa Hufanga and inside linebacker Dre Greenlaw. So clearly the Broncos recognizing some deficiencies on the defensive side of the ball, as much production as they got out of the edge rusher room, as well as the corner group tended to play for good stretches of the season, dealing with injuries to Riley Moss, some difficulty in injuries with Patrick Surtain on a week-to-week basis. They clearly recognized and felt, George Payton probably being the spearhead of this conversation, that they were not talented and deep enough on the defensive side of the ball to not address it prominently, both in free agency with Hufanga and Greenlaw and with their first-round draft pick in Jahdae Barron. But now looking at this inside linebacker duo on paper, because we have not seen anything of them on the field yet, today will be the first time that we get to see any semblance of organized team activity that includes the veterans and the rookies. But looking at this group on paper, I genuinely feel that this grouping of Dre Greenlaw and a returning Alex Singleton from injury, assuming health is there, that we're not dealing with injuries like we have, and that's a big if, this will be the best inside linebacker duo for the Denver Broncos since Super Bowl 50 with Danny Trevathan and Brandon Marshall. And I say that because when you look back through the history of the inside linebacker combos for the Broncos from 2016, the season after they won the Super Bowl, to last season, it's been a pretty significant revolving door with some repeating names. You had guys like Todd Davis, Corey Nelson, and then, of course, Brandon Marshall in 2016 after the Super Bowl. And then Todd Davis continues his kind of consistent presence, being top 3 or 4 on the team in tackles from 2016 to 2019 with names like Josie Jewell, Alexander Johnson. And then as we get to the COVID season in 2020, you know, Todd Davis is no longer here, and you start to mix in guys like Baron Browning and Jonas Griffith and dealing with this revolving door of injuries until you get to last season, where Alex Singleton goes down in week 3 against Tampa Bay with an ACL tear, and you end up running with a skeleton crew of Cody Barton, a one-year deal free agent pickup, and Justin Sternad, a young rookie contract player that you've kind of moved around a little bit throughout your defensive pairings. But you run down that list, and you got to be honest, there's probably not a better combo on paper than a healthy Alex Singleton, who, like Todd Davis in the late half of the 2010s, was kind of a mainstay in the inside linebacker room. Alex Singleton has been kind of a steadying presence there, and we've seen him produce pretty significantly season over season as long as he stays healthy. And that's exactly the book on Dre Greenlaw, except Dre Greenlaw's ceiling is significantly higher than Alex Singleton. You could probably argue his floor is pretty significantly higher as well. The issue has always been injury. Alex Singleton and Dre Greenlaw have missed a combined 29 NFL regular season games over the last 2 seasons. Alex Singleton, as I mentioned, goes down with an ACL tear in week 3 against Tampa Bay. Dre Greenlaw has a non-contact injury in the second quarter of Super Bowl 58 against Kansas City, popping his Achilles tendon, forcing him to miss the majority of the last season before San Francisco is able to bring him back right at the end of the regular season. And we saw the drama that caused as well within their defensive linebacker room. So assuming that health is there, which that's all that we can do. The NFL has a 100% injury rate. Everyone's going to get injured. But it doesn't mean that they're going to get injured in 2025 or injured significantly enough to miss the level of time that each of those players have missed in the last season or 2. But I truly believe that if Alex Singleton is able to rebound, who was playing well, by the way, in the first 3 weeks of the season of 2024, if he is able to rebound and be close to, if not the same player that he was pre-injury, and the gamble on Dre Greenlaw pays off, at least for this single season, we are going to see production and a stout defensive front from the inside linebacker position, the likes of which we have not seen since the Broncos hoisted the Lombardi Trophy. Again, a big if, but that is, I think, the gamble that George and Sean Payton were making. And I think that it's a reasonable enough gamble to throw some chips on, considering San Francisco wanted Dre Greenlaw back very badly. We saw reports coming out of NBC Bay Area about how Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch were aggressively pursuing Greenlaw to try to bring him back before he eventually parted ways and ends up now in Denver. And we also saw the San Francisco 49ers, who have a pretty stout defense and have had for a number of years now, how different they looked without Greenlaw there in the center of it all after that Achilles tear in the second quarter of the Super Bowl. So this is a big question mark, the inside linebacker position for Denver. But if they hit green lights here, it is going to make a massive difference, because as good as the Broncos defense was, their depth was tested at both the inside linebacker and secondary cornerback position. And we saw the limitations that can have, just like we've seen for the better part of the last decade, the limitations that can have when the quality there is subpar, especially as the league continues to dive more and more into the passing game and make that the focal point of an offense compared to the run game. So we will continue counting down some of the bigger storylines as it relates to the Denver Broncos in the 2025 season, now that organized team activities have begun starting this week, the first of 2 sessions as we crawl closer and closer to training camp, and we will be there to break it all down for you. Upcoming this week, we're also going to have to at some point talk about the abysmal, genuinely unbelievable, historically bad season that the Rockies have unfolding for them, and another some more additions and twists in the Nuggets offseason preview as they continue their general manager search, and right around the doorstep to one of the more pivotal off seasons in the history of their franchise, which is coming up on 5 decades just here in the next couple of years. All things to come later this week. We will catch you then. Follow us on social media at DenverSports 1043. Like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at DEN Sports 1043. We'll catch you at the same time in the same place tomorrow.